Welcome to the Bald Brad Show. Our episode today is dealing with a debate between Ben Shapiro and Anna Kasparian regarding capitalism versus socialism. And what I want to do is zoom in on a specific segment of the debate to show how the left argue, as well as their answer to everything is government. With that being said, let's go ahead and roll the tape.
Respond to that, though.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
To argue that the corporate tax rates in the United States are too high, or that,
they are too high.
I mean, first off, let me just touch on the comparison you gave regarding progressive taxes in European countries versus the United States. I mean, yes, the taxes might be higher in those European countries, but what do people living in those countries get in return? They get incredible childcare.
This is actually interesting, so I want to pause it here. Is that the left always go towards this type of argument that whatever the government provides, meaning you a service, is that you're automatically going to get incredible quality. Your health care is going to be incredible, your child care is going to be incredible. But the thing is that whenever the government's providing you with a service, you're only going to get two of three things. Of those three things, it's going to be either affordability, universality, or quality. And you're going to have to sacrifice one to get the other two. The left always sacrifice affordability, meaning that whatever service they're providing is going to be very, very expensive. Why? Because you're providing it to everybody, and it's going to be quote unquote incredible quality, which isn't always the case. You're going to sacrifice a portion of that quality as well, because you might not have enough money, but you're also providing it to all. And whenever you're providing it to all, sometimes that quality can crumble in some way, shape, or form. But for the sake of this argument, is that the Europeans are always sacrificing affordability so they can provide it to all, as well as provide somewhat of a good service to all their people. And so that is why you're seeing these European countries having an increased corporate tax rate, as well as an individualized tax rate increase, is so they can provide this type of service to their people.
And the average American family, two-income household, spends a whopping 22% of their household income on childcare alone.
So this is an argument the left always go towards as well, is because something's always expensive for the American citizen, then who should subsidize that, or who should end up paying for it to fill in that gap or lower that ultimately 22% partial of income going towards childcare is the government. The government's the answer to everything. And that's the main focus I want to talk about in today's video. In this breakdown, is the left always goes towards the government being the answer to all, the end all be all, and that is not the answer we need to go towards. At no point does the left ever look at the individual and the individual's decisions to get to the point where they're at of paying 22% of their household income to childcare services. Everybody knows that having a child is very, very expensive. And that is why you need to plan for that child and plan for that expense happening in your life so that you're not paying in upwards of 22%. Or if you are, then that's not a big deal for your finances or for your budget. But the problem is that people make silly decisions sometimes. I'm not saying having a kid is a silly or bad decision, but you have to know the expenses that go into having a child. And so whenever the left make this argument, it's always that whoa, whoa, me, whoa, the American citizen, whoa, this person. And because that person made a quote unquote, maybe a bad financial decision, or made a bad decision in general by maybe having a kid when they shouldn't have a kid because they can't afford to have that kid, that it's the taxpayer that ultimately needs to foot that bill because they made that decision. And it even goes a step further. Maybe you didn't make a bad decision. Maybe you want to try and change your life or fork your family tree in some way, shape, or form by going to, say, college. Well, you might not have the financial stability to be able to go to college. Well, because you might have made bad decisions in the past or didn't have made good decisions, maybe that was your parents or your grandparents that had your parents and then ultimately comes to you, because nobody made good economic decisions in their life. Well, it's the taxpayer that now has to foot that bill for you going to community college, which is what's happening right now in some states like California. So again, it's always the taxpayer that ends up having to foot the bill for other people's decisions, whether those decisions are good or those decisions are bad. And it needs to stop, because it's not a good solution, or a solution that's going to change our social fabric here in the United States.
Right? So when you're talking about European countries that offer quality childcare, that, by the way, that opens up the opportunity for people to go to work, something that we should maybe think about as we're dealing with this labor shortage.
Here's another false thing that she's making here, is she's making the correlation that there's a labor shortage because people aren't able to go to work because they have their kids. Well, it's the government that's stopping people from going to work for two reasons. One, you cause a government shutdown, right? Through that government shutdown, you shut down schools too, because everybody was freaking shut down. So your kids had to stay at home. And two, the government's also outcompeting the private sector by providing unemployment checks and services to people that are not going back to work, because they're getting paid more by the federal government than they are, or the state government, than they are going back to work by their employers, which is why Joe Biden says, it's your bargaining chip. It's the employee's decision now, blah, 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 all these things. And so by her just correlating the fact that, oh, because you have a child and it's too expensive, that's causing a labor shortage. Well, no, the labor shortage is just caused by the government within itself by shutting down all businesses, the schools, as well as outcompeting the private sector of paying more money than they would be getting at their jobs regularly. So people are not going back to work. And why would you? Because you're getting paid more money, which is why you're going to see the income averages spike because everybody's getting checks.
64,000 women left the job force in April alone. Not because they want to, but because they can't afford childcare.
Again, just because they can't afford childcare is not the problem of the American taxpayer. Now, is that a very crappy situation to be in? Absolutely. Is that you're having a child, you can't afford that child, and you didn't run the numbers to see what things would look like and how things would be forecasted out. And so what's the solution, everybody? Like I said, it's the government, the taxpayer, you right there. Because that other person, and you didn't make that decision for the other person, you should still have to end up paying for it. That's how the left run and work things.
Everything in this country is privatized. Everything has a for-profit model. And there's consequences that come along with that, including for the business community that might want, a more robust social safety net program, or social safety net to ensure that people feel comfortable enough to go to work. But we don't have that here. So yes, people might pay more in taxes, including those lower on the income scale. But what they get in return is far greater than what people in this country have been getting.
Automatically assuming the fact that whenever the government program is being initiated, that you're going to ultimately get quality. Those same people that the Young Turks talk about, the people that are on minimum wage, right? They can't even save 1% of their paycheck to go towards a mutual fund or go towards savings or anything like that, is that now you're going to tax them to provide them a service that they might not even need. Not everybody that's on the low income scale has a child. So now you're taxing somebody, right? A taxpayer doesn't have a child to pay for somebody else's childcare services when maybe that low income family chose not to have a child in the first place because they knew they couldn't afford it. And so now you're taxing them for no reason. And now you're only hurting them. The same people that are always for the minimum wage, always for raising the minimum wage, are now trying to ultimately hurt those minimum wage earners to pay for somebody else's decisions. And that is what I want to talk about today, because that is something the left is always pushing, and it's having a negative effect on the American taxpayer when ultimately it should be left up to the individual to pay for their own child that they chose to have and not left up for somebody else to pay for. Well, thank you so much for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please make sure you like and subscribe to this video, share it with your friends and family all over social media. Find me on TikTok because I cut these videos up into snippets and things like that. And I'll see you later here on The Bald Brad Show.